But Dave, let's close this podcast out taking a look at our top 5 for our NBA Big Board. If you're checking us out on YouTube, make sure to check out our 5 through 16 along with our 16 through 25 as well. If you're on Blog Talk Radio and podcast services around the world, make sure to keep on keeping on, because you've been keeping on all the way through into this final segment. How long can I say, and how many times can I say keep it on? But Dave, we are going to keep on keeping on. Give us your 5 through 1 and close this thing out.
Sure thing. My 5 through 1 starts like this. Kevin Porter Jr. at number 5. At number 4, I've got R.J. Barrett. At number 3, I've got Ja Morant. 2, I've got Cam Reddish. And 1, Zion Williamson.
It's funny because we've got the same five players. One thing is
you're just
different.
being disrespectful.
And I'm gonna put
my boy.
I'm gonna put Kevin Porter Jr. at number 5. Ja Morant, Dave's boy, is gonna be at number 4. And then the Dukies, R.J. Barrett at 3, Cam Reddish at 2, Zion at numero uno. And Dave, you mentioned it last week. Like the tease was on that you were gonna put Ja in the top 3. They can check out our segment from last week if they want to know exactly why you're so high on Ja Morant. But the guy I want to look at is, because here's the thing with these top 3, top 5, is in the first big board, Brandon and I looked at all 3 Dukies because we hadn't seen them play much.
Yep.
We've seen them play. There's no argument that they're all top 5 picks in the NBA draft. Here's a question, though, I want to ask you, and this is coming up because of, I'll be honest, a Mr. Sean Anderson put this thought into my head after it's like, oh, do we talk Zion to the Knicks? He's like, I don't want to talk about Zion. Like, Sean is Zioned out, basically, when it comes to the draft.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you, though, is Zion overhyped? Is he too hyped? Because this is even a guy in the last 2 games against Princeton, a team we talked about, only had 17 points in the 26 minutes that he had, but he did have 10 rebounds in that game. And against Texas Tech, had a 4 of 9 day from the field, 9 of 10 from the line, yet again 17 points, which isn't the usual that we're expecting from the number 1 overall pick.
It's only averaging 19. Are you shitting me? You're picking on him for the 2-point differential?
I'm just asking, is he overhyped? That's what I'm asking.
He's overhyped, but he's still fucking incredible. What?
Because I can't say I'm bashing on him because I have him at number 1.
Yeah,
clear number 1.
He is the clear number 1 because athletically and physically we haven't seen his combination of speed, size, strength, and athleticism.
And every single game there's at least one dunk.
Absolutely. And no one can really slow him down. That's the impressive thing. Like he's shooting 62% from the field. That's with him chucking up an attempt or 2 at 3 every game, which he's only hit 3 of his 18 on the year.
Yeah.
So let's just put it this way.
In that Kentucky game, he was 100% from 3.
If he went full Ben Simmons on us, he'd be shooting 72%. Do you know how fucking broken that is? Like, can someone respect that, please?
Oh,
it's outrageous how good he is. Defensively, he's a monster. Offensively, he can get to the bucket, and that's all you need him to do. He's great on the boards for his size and height. Like, he can facilitate. He can give you steal. He can do everything. That's what makes Zion special. Isn't necessarily like the numbers are just bouncing off the page, but like it's Zion himself. You look at that kid play basketball and just like he passes every eye test out there. I've never seen someone go up and down the court with such like, I don't even know what to call. Like I think Sean compared him to a cannonball like the one time, or a bowling ball, like whatever it is. He hits the lane with aggression and he just absolutely lays it down and he loves to play and he is consistently working to get better. Like there's nothing in his game where I'm like, yeah, that eliminates him as number 1 overall pick in my mind. Like there's nothing in this game.
Are people though going to get bored of him as the season goes on though? And the reason why I ask that is take a look at the past drafts that we've had just in recent history. Yep. Last year, you could have made an argument. Some people wanted Ayton to go number 1.
Yeah, they were
wrong.
You
had the Trae Young lovers.
They were very
wrong.
That
were like, Trae Young should go number 1. You had the Euro lovers
if
saying
you
Luka
recall, I was correct
should go
on that
number
one.
1.
Yeah.
There were even people that were saying Marvin Bagley should have been number one.
They were also wrong.
There was more of a divide of who's the number one pick.
There was.
In 2017, it was Markelle Fultz versus
And everybody else.
Lonzo
No, it was
Ball.
Markelle Fultz and everybody else.
But like the big one we did was Markelle versus
Right,
Lonzo.
but as far as draft stock, like it was never close. It was never close.
Then in the draft before that, Ben Simmons and
Clearly.
Brandon Ingram were the
Ben,
two.
by far number one.
Ben
he was a standout.
the clear though. Like I don't think anyone had Ingram at number one overall. 2015, Karl Anthony Towns was kind of the clear number one.
It's funny
because
he wasn't until a couple weeks before the draft. Like the last month really set him apart because remember his college stats weren't really crazy. Like he was a good player in college, but when they got to the individual team workouts, people are like, "Holy shit,
Damn,
this kid!"
That's Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah,
that's basically what they were saying.
That really set him apart. So I just think that, yeah.
What about? I'll throw this one at you. I got two more. Wiggins and Parker. Was Wiggins the clear number one, or was there a debate for Parker?
There
Not
was
saying that he never would be.
There was a debate, but the whole point was that Wiggins was Maple Jordan. You know, you wanted basically the next generation of super athletic wing who can do it all for you. The problem was everything had been given to him, and he had no work ethic by the time he got to the NBA. So he's just a good scorer.
And then, of course, the last one, the 2013 one of Anthony Bennett.
Yeah, there was about 8 number ones in that draft.
There were numerous guys like Giannis. Looking back, Giannis would probably be the number one pick of that draft.
Well, knowing what you know now,
yeah,
at the time
that.
Giannis had it was he picked 13 or 15.
Yeah, I'm saying
wouldn't have that was a reach.
I'm saying
everybody's like, wow, that's an interesting pick.
Knowing what we know now, and I know hindsight's 2020. You could have taken Vic at 1, and people would have been happy.
Vic at 1 would have made sense that day. No one would have questioned
it. And
he
was number 2,
exactly.
which wasn't that far.
That's my point.
Giannis at number 1 wouldn't have been, like, even Rudy Gobert. But Giannis and Rudy were not going to go.
Giannis was a $120 and 6'9".
We didn't know what he was going to be, Dave. I'm just saying, looking back
he's the ultra, like, one-off scenario. You're talking about, like, you want to talk about, like, the golden boy of, like, development? It's Giannis. We've never seen someone go from 6'9", 120, and I know 120. I'm using hyperbole here. 6'9", 120, and he grew to 7 feet tall, and just absolutely yoked out. Like, no, that happens once in a generation. That player development during his time in the NBA, his body size growth, his dedication to the game, unprecedented.
But bringing it back to what I was going to do
get that out.
Is that a problem with Zion? Is that people like the reason why people say like they get bored with Zion or that he's too hyped about Zion?
You could say too hyped.
Is because, well, I do think there are people out there that are bored with Zion. And maybe it's bored of the oversaturation of Zion coverage.
That's fair.
Might play into it, but
ESPN literally covers one team in college basketball.
Exactly. And I feel like there's also what plays into that is there is no debate this year at all. Like, if you have anybody else except for Zion at number 1, you're an idiot. Like,
Ja coming close.
Everyone will just call you an idiot if you have anyone but Zion at number 1.
You're not
wrong. And I mean, I feel like that plays into it of why there might be that offset that are like, oh, he's too hyped, or oh, I'm getting bored with the Zion, because not only is he covered so much,
right?
There's nobody that can even put their name into the debate. Like, for example, I'll throw in the Wiggins Jabari or the Markelle Lonzo, because Lonzo was 2, where it was like, oh, this is probably going to be the guy that goes number 1, but I'm going to try to make a case for this guy to be the number 1 pick.
This year, it's going to be Ja Morant. Like, that's the only guy who can make a case in my mind.
Does he climb all the way to number 2 by the end of the year?
I think he can. I don't think there's any reason he can't go to 2. Like, I'm keeping Cam Reddish there because of Cam Reddish's body, and I'm hoping that he will start hitting those threes like he, was expected to do, being that outside wing presence who can just basically, he's got the perfect body size for a wing in the modern NBA. He has a great shooting stroke. He can play as your second best player, your third best player, like super humble of a player. Like he is a great teammate, and he plays great. He can play great defense because of his length out there. We haven't seen it consistently on for him. But honestly, watching Jarrett Culver just absolutely shut down Duke's wings between RJ and Cam, and I know like it's not just Jarrett at Texas Tech. They're a very good defensive team from top down.
But he runs that show.
But goddamn, was that embarrassing for Duke? to the fact where you have to have Zion and Trey Jones basically lead you to a victory over Texas Tech. That kind of put it on the map for me where it's like, okay, like Zion can get it done no matter what. Like, I don't know anyone who can just go in and just hard stop Zion Williamson.
And that's why I knew last week when we teased it, I knew you were going to have Ja in your top 3, but I didn't know which Dookie you were going to have with him and Zion. For you, because I look back at the mock draft, and a lot of the mock draft you could add fit into it, but I know you don't really look at fit. You look at the best player.
In the top 5, BPA matters more than fit.
Okay, so because this guy was a top 5 pick, it was BPA. What has changed your mind so much on why Reddish is now above RJ? Because before, you were the only one that had RJ above Cam.
I was, and I think that as the season's gone on and his inefficient chucking continues, like I wanted to see growth out of his gameplay,
but you're just seeing a chucker.
I'm seeing the same shit. It's inefficient shots, and the looks he's getting, like he can get good looks. Don't get me wrong, but I just end up watching him. I'm going, well, you could have done something better there. Or a lot of times he's running the offense, which would be interesting to see. Like, because I'd be encouraged if he could run the offense full time. Obviously, they've got Trey Jones there, but he's definitely taking a secondary role to them. And it's just like, I don't really think he can. Like, when it came into the year, I was like, oh, like he can be a combo wing guard, like everything. He can do everything. That was my hope of RJ Barrett. And then I was like, okay, so offensively, like, yeah, he can distribute okay, but he's not exactly a floor general. And then what he's looking for shot-wise, I think he settles a lot. I think he can get better looks. And I just don't think he's doing it, or I don't think that they're trying to balance the guys on that team too much, and we're not getting to see enough out of RJ himself. So it just turns into RJ chucking for himself, and I'm like, I don't want to watch that anymore.
And I mean, for me too, the thing that I look at is, I know that, like you said, top 5 BPA, but the thing that I look at is the teams within the top 5 of the NBA draft. There's only 2 of them that I could see maybe taking an RJ over a Cam.
Yeah.
And that's the Knicks and the Phoenix Suns. And the reason why I say those 2 teams is, what do those teams not really have the best of? Ball handlers.
Yeah.
They could have him come in, and although he wouldn't be the point guard that the Phoenix Suns need, maybe he could play that type of a position and take on that role for them. Same thing with the Knicks. They haven't had the best point guard play. I know Moutier has been better than what they've had before. Trey Burke has been showing up, but he's on a 1-year contract. Frank is still developing.
Yep.
I just feel like those are the only 2 teams. Cleveland, who's right now at number 1, they're going to take Zion. Like, no other question, you take Zion number 1. But even like the Bulls and the Hawks, what, you're going to take another ball handler? So for the Bulls, you're taking the ball out of Chris Dunn's hands, maybe out of Zach LaVine's hands. And I know you might be saying, well, oh, maybe RJ comes off the bench. Why are you drafting a guy in the top 5 to come off the bench? That's another thing I would say. And then the Hawks, you have Trae Young. Why would you take the ball out of his hands?
I mean, what you want to go with that? You just laid out the case for every single one of them there.
With me, I'm just talking where that's why with me, I like Cam Reddish, because he doesn't need the ball in his hands.
We're all hoping he's like Paul George. You can put him on any team. He's a Klay Thompson, Paul George vein of any team fits. He's out there to play a good defense. He can shoot from the outside, and he can drive if necessary because he's got a good body size to him. I don't disagree. I just think that we haven't seen, like, the reason I swapped it finally was just like I said, RJ hasn't grown his game. Cam hasn't really done much either to impress me, but they're both there off potential. Like, and let's make no mistakes.
What helps Ja a little bit is
he's got his own team.
Well, not just that. He's got his own team. He's playing phenomenally even against the higher level talent, but also both New York and Phoenix. Yeah, I was speaking RJ, but I was only doing that because I had Cam and RJ V'd up. If Ja's in the conversation,
either one of them should take him.
RJ would lose to Ja then.
Yeah, 100%.
Because Ja fits the exact position 100%. That they would need. And that's a thing that could end up hurting RJ Barrett in the draft. I know that's more of a mock side of it, but like that could end up hurting him, that you've got a guy like Ja rising on so many people's boards and basically does the same thing as you, doesn't have to compete with other players on his team for looks and for just usage in general.
Yeah.
And can be exactly what these teams need.
Yeah, no, that's the biggest thing. Is just he's got the most opportunity. His potential is sky high. Like all these guys have crazy potential, but you know, Duke's in that unique position where they've got 4 first-rounders playing on the court at the same time, and they're trying to keep everybody happy. And the only one who looks happy out there is Zion.
Because Zion's getting all the coverage.
Zion's getting all the coverage. RJ, there's something not quite there for me. Like, it's just like, he's good. He's good, don't get me wrong. He's definitely still a top 5 pick in this draft, but there's just something not there about his game that I don't feel good. Like, he's not in the conversation for 1 overall anymore. Like, at all. I think Cam, same thing. I think the only 2 guys who could be 1 are Zion and
Ja.
2. Give me that 5% Ja.
Well, I'll tell you this.
If the Suns go 1?
If Phoenix sends number 1, I wouldn't be mad if they took Ja over Zion.
Yeah, I would laugh if they took Zion over Ja. Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, it's just Phoenix. They're just never going to have a point guard. Like, Devin Booker's been playing out of his freaking mind. And they've got 3 wings right now. I'm like, why not? Just add Zion. Like, you know, they're just going to do that thing where there's like, nah, we're not going to take need. We're going to go for best player available.
Or I'll say
it's number 1 pick of the
this,
draft.
and I know this is a draft thing, but I'm going to put this nugget and just leave this nugget for maybe someone to take it down the line.
Sure.
How crazy would it be if we saw the Suns at number 1 and they say, all right, we're drafting Zion for a team that maybe ends up at 4, and they trade Zion to try to get, like, what if it's like Zion goes 1, then you see Cam go 2, and boom, RJ goes 3. The team at 4, they go, hey, you want Zion? You want to give us Ja? Take Ja and give us first-round picks. We'll give you Zion Williamson.
I don't know that I could give up Zion Williamson.
Once you have him?
Like, that's the thing, is you don't want to be the team that passed on him. But even worse than passing on him is trading him away.
But you get more picks, Dave. You get more first-round picks.
How's Atlanta feeling right now?
I know, right?
How's Bagley doing? You know,
could have had Luka Doncic
being a great 6-man. That's what you want out of your number 2 pick, right? 6-man. Yeah.
I mean,
I'm
technically
sorry.
the Suns could have had him too.
Yeah.
Suns could have had Luka too. Suns wouldn't be dead last with Luka.
Ayton's playing pretty well, but I would advise Luka. If you watched all of our draft coverage from last year, I was speaking the praise.
We could also ask the same question of how do you think the Jimmy Butler Sixers or the LeBron Lakers would feel with Jason Tatum instead of Markel and Lonzo?
Yeah.
Either of those teams.
Either one
instead of what they got. And more so the Sixers. Because they had the first overall pick. But I mean,
both of them could have taken them.
Last thing I want to ask you, though, in this segment is the only other guy that is not a Dookie and is not John Morant is Kevin Porter Jr. The thing I want to ask you with him is because he's the 5th spot, what would you put his percentage in your mind to keep that 5th spot by the time we get to 3.0, or will a guy like Keldon Johnson,
if he doesn't
a guy
play,
like Jared
he's not going to be
or Jarrett Culver, will those guys overtake him and we could see a new number 4?
If he doesn't play, he's not going to be number 5 for long. That's in my mind. Like, he needs to get healthy, and that's the biggest thing in my mind. If he's not healthy, there's a good chance he slides, because if Culver looks great going forward, awesome. If Keldon Johnson looks great going forward, awesome. I think Kevin Porter Jr. is very good, but we've seen such a limited sample size out of him that I can't say he's like going to be a locked-in top 5 pick on this board. It's not the case.
And the thing I'm looking at here is there's an article from the Orange County Register.
Yeah.
And they're just saying that he's still sidelined. This was about 11 days ago, that he's eyeing a late December return.
Well, December's over.
Late December, early January then at that point.
Clearly January, because December's over.
We're kind of in that range where, hey, maybe he could be returning. And that to me is obviously the big thing. If he doesn't play, does it turn into a ball situation where he's missed 3 games, fell on ours, or does it turn into a Darius Garland situation of we know he's going to be out, he's stayed pat where it is.
I mean, to be fair, statistically, he hasn't been jaw-dropping amazing.
Yeah.
It's the eye test is why he's there. It's what he can do for you. So I don't know that necessarily, like, what we saw at Darius Garland was like, okay, this guy's a bucket getter. Like, period, done story. I think
but
Kevin
also,
Porter Jr.'s got a lot more to prove.
he wasn't expected to be top 10. So, I mean, where he is,
Yeah.
I feel like that helps him. Of being
absolutely.
that late teen,
Yep.
where it's like, hey, you
Late
know what?
lotto.
There's not many guys competing to try to jump you at
No,
that part.
it's a narrow or it's not a deep draft class by any means.
Whereas
So like,
Ball is out for 3 days. We question that injury. He falls 3 spots.
well, he's also a 7-footer with a foot injury.
Yeah.
That's why.
Whereas Kevin Porter could be in that same vein, especially if Keldon Johnson keeps popping off.
Yep.
If a Jared Culver keeps doing better, I'll be honest, I almost put Culver above. Like, I know I had Porter, Johnson, and then Culver. I almost wanted to put Culver at the top just because of that. Like, A, because of that game against Duke.
Yep.
3, because when you look at the per 36s, like, his numbers are better than Keldon Johnson's, better than Kevin Porter. I just don't know if I'm ready to do that yet. But when we get to 3.0, I might be able to have
I think
that
it's fair.
be set. Any final things you want to throw out there before we wrap this up?
No. I think it's a lot of this will just come down to the Dukies and see what they do for the rest of conference play. Like, really, that's a big thing. It's just see what they do against their opponents. And I'm really excited when we hit conference tourney time. Start to see the best out of these kids, hopefully.
And that is actually, you bring that up, that is actually around the time that our next big board will come out. So the next big board, I'm going to do a little bit of schedule keeping for you guys. Next big board will be the February 25th is when we're going to record it. So end of the regular season, right before we get to all the tournament fun. The fast break is actually going to have a mock draft this Friday is when we're recording that. So that'll be out this weekend. And then on the NFL side, we've got a mock draft coming up for the NFL on the 15th of January. We'll record that. And then February 4th will be our next NFL big board. So we are getting right into the heat of all the draft coverage here at MVP. Make sure to also check out all the stuff that Dave and I did last week. We talked about John Morant. We pissed people off asking if Nasir Little will be a bust. And then we also talked about Jared Culver as well. I want to thank you guys for checking out the podcast. Thank you guys for checking it out on YouTube, on podcast services. Make sure you go and rate and review the podcast on iTunes and Apple Podcasts. It would really mean the world to us. And when we get new reviews, I read them here on the podcast as we get them. I want to thank you guys for listening. And as always, I'm pointing at the camera, even though you can't see it. Have a good day and a happy new year, everybody.